Hello, it's Rebecca from Precious Pages Papercraft, and today I'm designing a layout for Papermaze using the Winter Market collection by Carta Bella. So as you can see, I've cut a giant snowflake shape from one of the patterned papers. This one is called Snowmen, and I'm using the B side of it. It's a cut file from Peartree Cutfiles, and I'm using the negative centre part of the cut file. So I'm just going to stick it down to some really thin white cardstock, and that's just to make it a bit more sturdy, because my plan is to go around the entire outside edge of the cut file with a paper piercing tool. I'm going to pierce holes all around it and then use embroidery thread to stitch around the cut file. So I didn't want to stitch on the actual cut file itself. I didn't want to cover up too much of the patterned paper, so I'm piercing the holes in the white cardstock and stitching through the cardstock, and then I'm going to cut it out but leaving a very thin white border all around the outside edge. And that's because I'm going to use, here you go, a dark cardstock for my background, so I wanted to make sure that that snowflake patterned paper really popped off the page. I wanted to add some mixed media to my background, but I didn't want to go too mad, so I'm using a Lindy's Starburst spray here in Sassy Sapphire. I've mixed it with a tiny bit of water, and I'm literally just going to add paint splatters to my background. This one here I'm using is a Cosmic Shimmer Iridescent watercolour paint. I think that one's called Aqua Mist. I'm also going to use a Shimmers paint in Ultramarine. Now on camera here you can't really see my splatters too well. I couldn't see them too well myself as I was doing it. But I wasn't too worried because all of these paints and inks I'm using are shimmery, so I knew that once they dried you would see them a lot better with the shimmer. And then I'm finishing off my background here with a Distress spray stain in crushed pewter, which is like a metallic silver spray. And again I'm just using a paintbrush to add splatters, and I'm going to use my heat tool to dry that. And as you can see, once it's dry, it's so much more noticeable. So it's a really simple background, wasn't difficult at all, literally just using a paintbrush to add splatters. But because all the paints are shimmery, it gives a really lovely effect on my background. Initially, I'd planned to add a hand-stitched border all around this page, but by the time I'd stitched all the way around my cut file, I was a bit done with stitching. My hands were killing me, so instead I'm using what's left of the Snowmen patterned paper. Just gutted the middle to tidy it up a bit, and I'm going to add that as a frame around the outside edge of my page. So I've just trimmed off a 1/4 of an inch off of all four sides of my of my cardstock background. Which is a navy blue Basil Basics from the Matchmaker pack. And then I'm distressing the edges with my scissors like I always do. I tell myself at the beginning of every layout that I'm not going to add a border and I'm not going to distress the edges, and it's just one of those things that I'll finish my layout and I'll look at it and I'm just not happy with it until there's a frame on it. So maybe it should be my New Year's resolution to try and create more layouts without a border on them. I've just applied double-sided sticky tape all the way around the outside edge of my background and just sticking that down there, and I just find that this pattern paper frames my layout nicely. So this is how my layout is looking. The eagle-eyed among you may have noticed that there's a couple of arms of the snowflake I've not stitched, mainly because I was running low on that colour of embroidery thread, so had to be careful, and also because I knew my photo was going to sit there, so you wouldn't have noticed the stitching, so I decided to save my poor wrists and leave those out. So this is my photo. It is from 2018, I think. I need to double check. But it was the first snow my little boy had that he was able to go out and play in. So I've added a couple of layers behind it. I've got a blue Basil Basics and a glitter silver cardstock. And you just saw a peek there at the back of my cut file. I've raised it up onto craft foam to add some dimension to my layout, and I'm also adding a bit of foam behind my photo there. I recently treated myself to these fine liner bottles. I wasn't getting on with them at all. My glue was too thick for them and I was having to really squeeze to get anything to come out of them. But I have since watered down the glue and they now work a treat, and I'm really happy with them. So top tip there, if you want to buy some fine liner bottles but your glue is too thick, just add a tiny bit of water to the bottle and shake it up, and they work so much better. So this is the ephemera pack for the collection, and I'm just going through selecting what I want to use. This piece here that says snow, I've pierced a hole either side of the letters, and I selected a couple of different blue embroidery threads, and I'm just going to thread those through that piece of ephemera. It's just something different, adds a bit more interest to the page really, rather than just sticking it down just as it is. Just adds a bit more interest and texture to it. Just using my scissors again to distress the edge of that piece before I stick it down. And I also decided I wanted it to stand off the page a bit more. So I'm using a distress ink there in, I think that's called Blueprint Sketch, that one. And just with a like a foam blender to go around the edge of that piece to ink the edges. And then this is the element sticker sheet. I'm just going through that to see what I'd like to use. I don't want to embellish this page too heavily because I want that cut file to stand out, and I also don't want to cover up too much of the mixed media, so I'm just selecting some small pieces just to add down the side there. So I've got a couple of the like word phrase stickers, and I'm gonna cut this tag in half so I can use the other half somewhere else. I just add that down the side. I've got this cute little snowman on the side there. Sadly, we haven't got any photos of snowmen. I can only assume we didn't make one on this day, which I'm a bit gutted about. And we live in the Chilterns, so we don't often get much snowfall. I see everybody up north getting loads of snow and I get really jealous because we hardly have any. So I've used this little snowman piece anyway because there was lots of snow, so he fits on the layout fine. Adding just a scattering of little snowflake stickers all around my big snowflake cut file there. This piece at the top here that says Happy Snow Day, that's going to act as my title. I couldn't decide on a title and I went through all the thickers I have in my stash, and I couldn't find any that really looked nice with this collection, so I've decided that I'm going to use that piece of ephemera as my title. Going to add a couple of thread tangles to my layout. I've got one there underneath the round element there, I think that says Stay Cozy, and I'm just going to do another one to the top left there. This thread is it's by We Are Memory Keepers and it's a silver metallic thread. You can get it from Papermaze and it's brilliant for thread clusters and tangles. I really love it. It keeps its shape really well when you try and kind of make circles with it. So it's one of my favourite things to use. So just added a bit of that. That's what I'd planned initially to stitch around the, like create a border with. but it doesn't go through my sewing machine very easily, and I didn't think I had it in me to do any more hand stitching. So I've just added a couple of clusters instead, and just bringing in one of these cute little penguins. There's quite a few little penguins in this collection and they are adorable. So I've got a few little round like crystal gems here. I'm just adding, they kind of reminded me of snowballs when I was going through my stash, so I thought I would add a few to the back of my layout here, and a couple on that ephemera piece. Just going back through the ephemera here, I wanted to add something underneath my photo, and in the ephemera pack there's these little tags, but there weren't enough to kind of stretch along the bottom of my photo. But luckily there are similar tabs on the element stickers sheet, so I've used those instead. And then I'm just going to add another word sticker on top there. So I thought I was done. I've already put a border on my page, but then I decided to grab my Nouveau drops and create another border. So I'm alternating these. I've got one is a Nouveau crystal drops. I think it's called Ivory Seashell. It's kind of like a white pearlescent colour. And the other one is a glitter drops. I think that's called Blue Lagoon off the top of my head. And I just go all the way around the edge of my page there, alternating them. Yeah, I love doing this. Once you find your rhythm, you get going really quickly and it's so much fun. It's a technique I learnt from Rachel Millington. She's like the queen of Nouveau, so I'm glad I came across her, because I now have a whole stash of Nouveau drops. So that's my finished layout. Thank you so much for joining me. Please do check out the collection over in Papermaze. There's still loads of it left. It's great for these wintry layouts. So I'll leave you with the close-ups, and if you want links to all the products I've used, you can find those over on the Papermaze blog. So I'll see you next time. Bye.